Let's say you're a recent high school graduate. And let's say you have already enrolled in the university of your choice. And let's say you were given a university email address. Now, let's say you receive this email on your new university email.
Are you interested? I'm a well-known college professor who is too busy to do stuff because I'm currently in Australia. If you can help me, I'll give you a job and you can make lots of money. Just send me your full name, full address, state, zip code, age, occupation, alternate email address, blah, 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 blah.
What should you do?
Hit delete.
Delete is right, but unfortunately, some students respond to emails like this. Sophia, not her real name, is going to tell us what happened when she answered this email.
And so that email, it came up a couple of times, I'd say about 3 times, and that's when I read the email and I saw that they were gonna offer me a job and that the job was gonna pay me $620 weekly. In the email, it explained that he was a psychology major and that he had gone to school and he had already about 30 years of experience. So I thought, well, this guy is a major in psychology and I'm gonna be able to learn from him.
After the initial email exchange, the professor began to communicate with Sophia via text.
Well, the first text message was a greeting. He told me, thank you for taking the offer and for working with me. And he said that the first thing he wanted me to do was buy personal business check at a local store. To me, it sounded legit because he was gonna send me the checks and I was gonna deposit into my account and I was gonna do the task that he was gonna tell me to do.
The professor gave Sophia specific instructions on how to deposit the checks. She was to go to the bank when it was closed and deposit the checks via the ATM.
The first task, he said that he needed iTunes cards for a program for his students. He wanted to reward them for their hard work. So that night I went to Vons and bought 5 iTunes cards worth $100 each. So that was the first night. And then the next day he said he wanted 9. So a few days later, after I bought the iTunes cards, I checked my bank account and it said I had a negative amount of $1,800. The next day I went to the bank and I asked them what had happened with my bank account. They told me that the checks that I had deposited were fake and that if I had gone to them face to face, they would have told me that they were fake and this would have never happened to me. The man told me that the only option I had was to pay all of the money because if I didn't, I wasn't going to be able to buy anything like a car or a house. I'm very scared. At that point, I didn't know what I did or what had happened.
What happened was that Sophia had fallen victim to a very common email fraud. This crook took advantage of her willingness to take a job to help with her school expenses and also her youth and lack of experience to steal $1,800 from her. Even worse, there were a number of red flags that clearly indicated that this email was in fact a fraud. First, the email was not addressed directly to Sophia, but just had a generic greeting. Second, the crook wrote a lot about his position, education, and accomplishments as a way to introduce himself, an obvious attempt to impress the reader with his vast experience and credentials. But listen to some of these sentences from the actual email. Do they sound like they were written by a university professor? You will be paid in advance for all tasks and purchased to be done on my behalf. If you care to proceed with the job, get back to me with the information listed below so I can process your information as to consider it valid to commence working with me. The most obvious red flag in this email is that the sender asks you for personal information. A legitimate company, government agency, educational institution, or other organization will never ask you to send personal information via email. What were some other red flags? Switching from emails to texting. In fact, the sender of the texts had a different name than the one used in the email. The urgency to perform the tasks. Even Sophia began to question why she needed so many iTunes cards in such a brief period of time. The precise instructions regarding printing and depositing the checks gave the sender a few extra days to continue his fraud and prevented bank employees from alerting Sophia to the phony checks. The signature on the checks was a completely different name from the sender of the emails and texts. The email involves money. Unfortunately, it was Sophia's money. The purchase of iTunes cards. Apple has a webpage about scams involving iTunes cards, which should only be used to purchase goods and services from the iTunes Store or app. Scraping off the protective stripe and giving the codes to the crook. This is as good as sending him cash. Sadly, there really is a professor with the same name and credentials mentioned in this email. If you Google the professor's name, you can link directly to his webpage. The real professor's bio reads almost exactly like the first paragraph of the email. If Sophia had taken a moment to contact the professor or the university where he works, she would have discovered that the email was not sent by him, and she would have saved herself the grief of losing $1,800 to an email thief. Sadder but wiser, Sophia offers these words of advice.
So a lesson I learned is that whatever you get from an email, don't be too confident with what it says, because not everything out in the world is real. So you always have to communicate with your parents and communicate with someone that has experience and is older, because they know what happens and what can happen.
If you or someone you know has been a victim of fraud, please contact your local law enforcement agency. In Santa Ana, please call the Santa Ana Police Department Investigations Division at 714-834-4211 or 714-245-8770.